Hey, it's Mike. I wanted to look back on the year and say thank you for all the downloads of the podcast. It's been amazing. We've grown month over month. And, as I reflect on the year, I feel that I'm very fortunate to have this podcast and I have all of you listening, which is awesome. And what I wanted to do was to put together and, re-release the best of what I think are the best episodes of the year. There's many more, but these are some that I wanted to release during the holiday period for your convenience. And I wanted to wish you and your families a great holiday season and a healthy and prosperous new year as we go onward on our journey. So enjoy. Hey guys, it's Mike, your host of Craft Beer Storm. Also founder brewer at Barrelworks Brewing Company in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Today we have a special guest. We have David Walker from Firestone Walker. How about that? All right, these guys are making excellent beer. They're out in California. They've been around, 25 years. We're talking about it. But they started in the late 90s and grew and 450,000 barrels of beer a year. That's crazy amount. That's a large amount of beer. But we have David on, and he goes through a lot of his history. But without further ado, let's get to it. Hey, we're here with David Walker, Firestone Walker. How you doing, David?
Good, thank you very much.
No, thanks for taking the time to coming on. I really appreciate it. Your beer is delicious.
Good.
And you're making a lot of it, which is great. A lot of people know about you, and the thing that and you're British as well. I mean, I lived in England actually for 5 years.
Oh, good. Whereabouts?
We lived right outside of London in Surrey.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And we're in like.
Were you a banker?
No. I'm almost bankrupt talking about banker. I have a brewery, forget about it. But yeah. I was a CPA auditor, and I had opportunities to work in actually the rest of the world because they had a law that came out here in the U.S. And then I'm like, okay, well, I can do this anywhere. I have an Italian passport. My parents are Italian, so I guess I better move to England because they speak English, and it would be easier. Yeah. So we ended up in Surrey, Purford, West Byfleet, Surbiton, around that area. So
yeah, West Byfleet. And there you go.
Yeah, and then you're from Devon originally, right?
Yeah, I'm from Devon. I sort of actually got into the computer business really early on, sort of a lifetime ago, and wound up in the Silicon Valley. I married a California girl and moved out here when I was 27. So, yeah.
That's cool. That's Adam's sister, Adam Firestone?
Correct. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was sort of strange. We sort of quickly got to work and ended up with a suburban full of kids pretty quickly. So we ended up buying a sort of a small, somewhat bankrupt vineyard in the little valley where my wife Polly grew up, and her brother Adam Firestone was running a third generation family winery, Firestone Vineyard. And I got the artisanal bug, and Adam and I decided to see if we could make some beer. We couldn't talk the Firestone Vineyard into making beer, so we created the Firestone Walker Brewing Company and took the family name, and Firestone Walker was born.
Wow, that's great. Now, did you brew in England before? I mean, like a home brewer in England, or
no? Absolutely not. I mean, both Adam and I did a little bit of home brewing, but not at the level that a lot of our colleagues and compatriots had. I mean, I suppose our expertise we brought to it was sort of a bias for sort of an artisanal bias, concept of taking something from soil to glass, and just sort of a a sense of wanting to create something that we loved. And we both love beer, and actually preferred it to wine, which was sort of counterproductive considering the relationship. But so it was a sincere love for beer that sort of dragged us into it, and then trying to figure out how to do it, which was great. I mean, we approached it obviously very much from a sort of estate winemaker and grower's standpoint. So it wasn't in any way influenced by sort of in some ways, the craft movement that was going on in San Diego or in Portland or anywhere at the time. It was more, let's try and make some beer, ferment and condition beer, and that's how we got going.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, that's how I got the. I was living in England, and I had this. I went to Ireland a lot, and I had this Irish bread, and I'm like, okay, well, why doesn't it make a good Irish beer here in the States with this grain? It's delicious, you know. So that's what I had in the back of my head. And then I moved up to the Northeast here, New England, and the craft beer scene was booming. So I just started home brewing, and then did a Kickstarter, and then one thing led to another, and now we have a small brewery up here. But it's kind of like you said too, it's kind of a passion, and you want to make beer, you figure it out, right?
Yep.
Did you
exactly.
get? I guess you had a brewer. You got a brewer on board, or like a professional brewer?
Yeah. But pretty much everything comes out of Davis. I've been up there and done some, short courses on viticulture and try to understand a little bit about the vineyard. And so we got to sort of get a sense for the UC Davis had an amazing fermentation program, and we met one of the guys out of the program when we were starting back in 1995, a guy called Jeffers Richardson.
Mm-hmm.
And he was nuts enough to come and give us a hand. And so literally between the three of us, we sort of got a building going, and in an old vineyard, and started pulling together equipment. A lot of it was sort of used wine equipment, stainless steel. We obviously integrated clean American oak 60-gallon wine barrels into our process right at the very beginning.
Wow.
We made an English pale ale, DBA, double barrel ale, which we really wanted to make it in a traditional sense. So we looked at the way the Buellton brewers were making these beers, and they had these things called Buellton Unions, which was this sort of wonderful contraption that they used to ferment the beer. And actually, if you go to Marston's in the Burton-upon-Trent area now, you can still see the Buellton halls, and they're still functioning on a material basis. They're producing a beer like Pedigree, goes I think almost entirely through the unions. So we sort of created our own union using 60-gallon American oak barrels, and started making beer that way.
Wow, that must have been delicious. Now, what was the size of your system in the beginning?
Well, it was sort of a Frankenstein unit. It was a 24-barrel brew house. It really was it was actually a sort of a homemade unit that was originally designed, strangely, to brew non-alcoholic beer. We put it into the brewery and sort of gave it a shot, and a huge amount of kudos to Jeffers for sort of making the whole thing fly. I mean, we did the whole thing on a real skin tight budget,
right?
Because for the first several years, this thing was just moonlighting. I mean, we were just it started as a sort of a hobby would be the wrong word, but it started as something we didn't really have any grand designs, and so it was we didn't bring in any partners. It was just Adam and I.
That's great.
Yeah.
And it's that's a nice system to start out with. Did you have could you have a tap room at that time, or how was the laws then?
No, we didn't. We didn't. I like to say that our biggest competition at the time was indifference. I mean, people just didn't care what we were doing. So the concept of opening a tap room and asking people to come and drink full flavored, microbrewed beer was a stretch.
They just didn't. They weren't into that at that time. When did you? I'm sorry. When did you open again? Was it the late 90s?
We haven't been open up 1995, but like I said, we didn't open up in San Diego. I mean, we opened up in sort of an agricultural area in the central coast of California that was obviously well known for wine, but it was still a pretty agricultural area in terms of its palate for beer. So it took us a while. I mean, but that said, we sort of went to town and did what all of us do. We went out and shook hands and bothered people and tasted our beer at, state fairs and, dinners and everything else you can get your hands on.
That's what you got to do, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, slowly but surely, people started to recognize us and the beers. And, like I like to say, us, and at the time it was sort of 400 or so breweries around the country. We made a dent, and then several thousand followed, and they made a dent. And before you knew it, craft beer was not such a novelty. But we did. I mean, we really got our break because we were very, very. We worked 3 counties around our brewery in the central coast of California, and got on the local radio and started telling our story, and people connected to it.
Wow!
And it sort of worked. And about 6 years later, we, as we expanded, we did open up a small tap room in the brewery, and that was obviously more of a standard tap room that brewers have nowadays. Right.
But now you have a full-blown, I guess, restaurant?
Yeah, I mean, basically what we have is I mean, I pinch myself on a regular basis, but we actually have 3 locations. We have
Mm-hmm.
We have our main brewing production facility in Paso Robles, and that has a restaurant attached to it. And then we have our original brewery, which is about an hour and a half south, and that's where we do all our wild ales. It's called the Barrelworks, and that has a restaurant attached to it. And then we have our pilot brewery, which we actually put in Venice Beach, California, and that's where we do all our experimental brewing and test brewing.
Oh, that's cool.
And we have a little restaurant attached to that one too. So we are, we're now sort of firmly in the pub business. Because when people come to see the breweries, we want them to be able to sit down and have something to eat.
Sure.
Take it all in.
Sure. Yeah. And then, I mean, you guys get your hands on some nice hops too. You have the Luponic Distortion, where you have different releases, and then you get some of these like new esoteric experimental hops, and you do things with them. I was reading.
Yeah, we do. We like any journey, and our journey is about 25 years in.
Right.
You get some lucky breaks, and about 5 years into our journey, we bumped into a guy called Matt Brynelson, who ultimately became the vision and the head brewer for our beers. Jeff has left after about 3 years. He fell in love and moved to Sierra Nevada and went to brew for them. We were sort of in between brewers, and then fortuitously we met Matt, and Matt became our head brewer. The reason I mention that is Matt's background was he was a hop chemist before he went into brewing, so he has a rare insight into hop botany and hop culture. He's got an amazing nose and palate, and so the Luponic Distortion program is really in some ways an incubator for him to get his hands on new hop botany and new hop cultivars, and he travels all over the world for the American hop growers, as well as just sort of curiously seeking out different types of hops. So he has a unique exposure to different styles of hops, and we run them through that program, Luponic Distortion, where we rotate the hops out every 100 or so days, and a lot of them are unnamed, but it's a fun program, really is.
Oh,
great
yeah.
Beer.
Yeah,
Really great beer.
Yeah, the most recent one, I think you had tangerine, honeydew, strawberry, notes, gummy. Yeah, and then it's like German and West Coast hops, yeah.
That's the whole, we call it flavor through hops, and that's the whole idea. We were reluctant and didn't get into the situation where we were actually, putting fruit extracts into our beers,
right,
because we really felt that, you can come by those flavors honestly as a brewer. And if you just look hard enough, and you're smart enough, which in Matt's case he is, to adapt the hops to the flavors, then you can actually get all of that.
Yeah, I mean, hops are amazing. The stuff that comes out of them and different hybrids that they're making now.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's unbelievable what's happening, and they're really delicious. Unbelievable. But now, what do you see about, like, in England now? I mean, do you think, because you distribute, where do you distribute in the States? You're all over the place, I see.
Yeah, I mean, so we sell about 90% of our beer west of the Rockies. About 75% of it is sold in California.
Okay.
The rest we sprinkle across 35 states. And we sell some beer export as much as anything to defend our trademark. We sell some in England because I like to drink it when I go home. But even that we do it somewhat sparingly, because really we only want to partner with pubs that are able to honor cold chain and move the beer quickly. We're not in any retail of any significance. So we're a very strong West Coast brewery. We made a decision about 10 years ago to go into what I call food forward markets. So we went to New York, Boston, Philly, Chicago. And that ended up giving us a really interesting sort of representation on the East Coast, which is, I suppose, why I'm on the phone with you. So we do have a sort of a robust distribution network and commitment to selling our beer on the East, but it's a very different program to what we do on the West.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could find it here, and you have like a beer finder on your website, and I'm just plugging in different zip codes, and I'm like, wow, they're all over the place. But I've had your beers before, that's why. Delicious stuff. But in England, I guess you would have you just have it in pubs, you say, or places that, or would you have it in stores as well in England? Or?
Yeah, no, we have it in pubs, but also you're going to realize that, as you probably did, they have tied house laws. There are no tied house laws in the UK. So, a lot of the pubs are owned by the big brewers.
Yeah.
Or they're owned by large chain conglomerates that are sort of working strategically with big brewers, and you just can't compete as a small brewer in that market. So we have to rely on very small chains, or what you call free houses, independent pubs, and they're few and far between, and then a little bit of the craft brew bars and restaurants that you can get your hands on. So it's a very different landscape to the US. I know as brewers we all sort of like wring our hands about the 3-tier system, but it actually, there's some really great benefits that we get from the 3-tier system as American brewers in terms of access to market, and the fact that the tiers have been separated and restricted. It seems sort of cattywampus sometimes, but at other times I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah, it depends on the the brewery and the size. In your case, it's a great thing. You can get your product all over pretty efficiently, right? Because you have distribution. If you had to do it yourself, forget it. It would be a mess.
Yeah,
man. But Yeah. So, do you do any? You mentioned like farm to table before, maybe working with local, farmers. Do you guys infuse anything in your beers in terms of like, I think before you said no fruit, but is there anything else you use in some of your beer? Like
Yeah, I mean, we have, a part of our problem is we love beer. Our beer culture is alive and kicking in our brewery, and so we're pretty curious. In terms of what we do. I mean, we probably could make 2 beers and or 3 beers and satisfy 95% of our production, but we make about 100 beers. And,
wow.
And it's not because they sell extraordinarily well, it's because we're interested in beer. We, obviously we're very engaged with the local winemaking community in both our breweries. We do a lot of blending. We release an anniversary beer where we make several strong ales that we age in bourbon barrels and a range of other woods. Imperial stouts, extra special bitters, barley wines, quads, and so forth. And then we blend those beers to create an anniversary every year. And we blend those with world-class winemakers because they actually have a sort of a certain freedom on the palate to blend. We integrate a lot of local wood into our wild ale program, a lot of local fruit, obviously into our wild ale program, and local coffee. There's a huge amount of simpatico. First of all, just professional. We're bumping into these people in the store or at school baseball meets. So it's great to be able to share. And we released a beer this year called Rosalie, which is it's a beer wine hybrid. And
okay.
It's a beer rosé, and about 25% of it is wine, and we actually blend that together with a small beer. We have 20,000 gallons worth of grape juice sitting in one of our vessels at the moment, which is being blended to create Rosalie.
A beer rosé, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. So what would you call that? I guess it's not a beer or a wine, or how do I...
Well, it's definitely a beer. Yeah, it's definitely a beer. It has to be a beer in order for us to do it. The percentages are such that, we're fighting a lot of things, obviously, with this beer. There's the technical things that are very difficult, like fermentable sugars and a bunch of other stuff. But there's also some regulation that says that in order to make beer, it needs to be X amount beer. And we're sort of well within those categories. It's a delightful beer. I mean, it has that sort of Provençal rosé look to it. It's really delightful. It's about 5% ABV.
Wow.
But it's still a new category. It's not an FMB. It's not sort of sugary sweet. But it's also not a glass of rosé either. It's not sort of 12%. So it's it's in a can. We're slowly building a consumer base, but it's interesting. It's been a good little project for us and great for the summer.
It seems interesting. I don't know if it's out by me. Is it just in the West Coast? Or?
Yeah, no, you should be able to get it. I mean, it's only really hit broad distribution in the last couple of months, so it should start showing up in the East Coast.
Check it out.
You guys have had the brakes on your summer.
Yeah.
I think when the sun comes out, you'll see it show up.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
I must try it. Yes, but yeah. And what's your most popular? What are you selling the most of now? I think in the past it was the 805 blonde ale.
Yeah, no, it's very much that beer. 805 is sort of broken outside of the classic sort of craft drinker, and it's being sort of drunk by the person who is, when they're selecting a beer, they're not selecting craft only.
Right.
I mean, this might be an import drinker or a major domestic drinker, and They drink, first of all, they drink a lot more. Secondly, they tend to stay loyal to one brand for a while, and it's just a different experience, and so that has resulted in 805 being a huge volume beer for us in terms of our overall brewery.
Wow.
But we limit 805 still only available in a handful of states, and mainly it's most of the volume is drunk in California.
Right. Yeah, I don't think it's by me. Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I know it's you make a load of it from what I researched. But wow, I think I don't know. Did you go to CBC this year?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Oh, you did. Oh, I didn't see it. But we had the chief economist Bart Watson on, and he was saying things were trending toward the crisp. Like the number one category where it was kind of trending upwards was crisp. And I see you have the Pivo Pils, which is the Pilsner, which is great. I've had it; it's delicious. But you kind of have a West Coast hop twist to it. You dry hop it, I guess, with hops.
I mean, dry hopped is a generous term. I almost think it's definitely dry hop, but I think we wave the hops over it. I mean, it's a very, very, very light. It's a Saphir hop. And we really just wanted a note to that beer, because it's such a wonderful style, but it's sort of interesting. I love that beer. It's one of the most awarded beers that we've ever made, both in terms of World Cup awards and so forth. But it's hard to get the craft consumer focused on it at the moment. As you know, they've got their nose sort of firmly planted in hops
and IPAs.
And IPAs. IPA accounts for whatever it is, 50% of the craft beer that's drunk nowadays, and it's 40% of the growth in the category. Consumers are, when they think of craft beers, they think of hops.
Yeah,
and they don't think of pilsners,
right?
I wish they did, but it's and I think that's going to be a dynamic that remains with us for a while. It doesn't define craft. Craft is an enduring movement. It'll last for hundreds of years, so it'll go through several cycles, but the cycle we're at the moment is very firmly an IPA one.
Right. So cycles, do you think, I ask everybody this, do you think there's a craft beer bubble now, or what do you think about the industry and the amount of breweries that are popping up?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's a craft beer bubble at all. I say this often, there's 12,000 wineries in America, and they're constrained by climate. You've got maybe 10,000 breweries here by the end of the year. And I see that going well beyond that.
Right.
I think what we will begin to see, though, is we'll begin to see stratification of craft. So craft will become sort of brew pub, and then it'll become sort of small craft, which is direct to consumer brew on, and then finally there'll be sort of regional and super regional craft. So I think I like to say it's all American beer, and in some ways the word craft has become so convoluted and so defined and redefined and reworked and owned. I mean, someone told me the other day, McDonald's is using the word craft. So at some point the word becomes sort of white noise.
Craft
to
fries.
Me, to me, I love the idea of it being American beer because, and uniquely, I mean, as an Englishman, I mean, I look at the American craft beer revolution as an extraordinary time in beer, and I'm very proud to have been part of it. And I think when the history books are written about world beer, they'll talk about American craft beer is really a inflection point in the way that we look at beer. And I think American, I think craft beer is American beer to me. I think at some point it overwhelms the personality of, this, your grandfather's beer that was the classic sort of American light Pilsner. I think at some point, the American beer revolution that we've sat through for the last 35 years or so overwhelms that, and that defines American beer. So,
right. It is, I mean, it all starts here. But that was interesting what you said about the wineries. They're there's like 12,000 wineries, I think, in the U.S. Yeah. And they're all kind of concentrated because you can't really grow grapes like all over the place. But with beer, right. You can do that anywhere pretty much. I mean, it's all done indoors and you don't have to worry. And but you have a point there. And I think, there is a lot of room for growth, I think. It's just a matter of... and it's interesting dynamic. It could be, some of the regional brewers are getting really squeezed. So either got to be really big or you're really small, and then, people trend towards local or they go big but then you're saying that it's probably dynamic. It's going to evolve.
Right.
I think, which is interesting. But your beer is really great. Well, how many barrels are you guys putting out now a year?
We did about 450,000 barrels last year.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yep.
Wow.
But like I said, California is our home market, and I know that sounds like quite a claim, but we've been in the market now for 2 decades. We've worked every single pub and retail outlet and fair and tasting and brew fest. I mean, we've got a life's work into the state, and it's the 5th largest economy in the world, and it's 40 million people, and so the fact is, our brewery, although it seems large, is per capita is probably what's needed in order to sustain it, or to be a regional player in California.
Right. But you're smart. You're like, the majority's like in your home state. A lot of breweries like say they want to just, all right, we're going to conquer the U.S. and then they just go bananas and they distribute all over the place, and then they don't have really sales reps where they distribute to, and then they have to pull back, and then a lot of companies have just collapsed because of that dynamic. But I think what you're doing is fantastic. I mean, you're sticking with one state, and that's where you established, and you focus a lot of your efforts on that. So, and it's worked.
Brewing and selling beer is really not that difficult. I mean, you need to believe in what you're doing. You need to make the best possible beer you can, and you need to be really proud of that. And then you need to be engaged. Right. That if you're engaged, that should stop you from going out and borrowing too much money or doing things that you shouldn't be doing. And I think if you do all those things right and you work your ass off, your brewery will thrive.
Right.
People want to drink beer. They've been drinking beer for several thousand years. They'll continue to drink beer. Mm-hmm. And as long as we're listening to what their palates are desiring, and trying to sort of steer them in the right direction, I think a brewery is a healthy place is a healthy place to be.
Yeah, if you have the passion there and you focus, and like you said, you work your butt off, and you focus on a certain area, right? Just focus in on it, and then you can be successful. If you start spreading out, then it just gets chaotic.
It's a lifestyle. It's like being a farmer. Yeah. It's a complete life. You make the choice for the lifestyle. I mean, we just had our invitational brew festival here. It's 4,000 people show up. It's extraordinary. We put about 3,500 tickets on sale, and they sell out in less than 10 minutes.
Wow!
And we invite 50 brewers and their compatriots from all over the world to the event.
Oh wow!
And it's just the most fantastic weekend because it's this community of people who all share the same interests. They're all sort of running at the same sort of speed, and it's just great. I mean, it's it reminds you why we do this.
Mm-hmm.
There's it's just good, and I think that's part of owning a brewery is and you can't discount that. It's that whole sort of lifestyle, and it's I think if you're ready to commit to that lifestyle, a brewery will deliver it back to you.
Right. And the industry is fantastic. The collaboration and with Craft Brewers Conference in Denver. I mean, I just kept telling everybody, like, where are you going to go where you're going to see 14,500 people smiling, like happy?
Yeah, absolutely.
In one place, you're not going to see that, right? But beer has this effect on people and it brings people together, which is what we need in this world. There's so much division; it's horrible.
I
so
totally
much
agree.
Fighting, and it's just ridiculous. But this is a fantastic thing, and that's why I'm gravitating towards it too. And the brewers in the area here in New England, and different pockets of the country. But you can meet a brewer, like he could be a Hawaiian brewer or a guy. I met some people from like Thailand, and they were brewing. Really great people, awesome people. Really good people. But
magic of fermentation.
Yes, the fermentation, exactly.
Yeah.
But well, David, I appreciate you coming on and taking the time out. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. I'll bump into you. Maybe I'll come to your festival next year. I have to see.
Come by.
When does it happen?
Absolutely.
It happens when?
Happens first weekend in June.
Oh man.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's this weekend.
Yeah, just missed it. Yeah.
All right, next year.
Yeah.
But it's fantastic, and I appreciate your beer. It's excellent, and hopefully we bump into each other one day. But I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, and best of luck with the brewery.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
See you.
Yeah, it was David Walker, Firestone Walker. How about that? Right? Making some excellent beer out in California. Majority of the beer is sold in California, but they're smart. They're focusing in on their area, instead of distributing like all across the world, right? They focus in on California and they sell the majority of their beer in California, which is fantastic. But they are, they pick pockets of the states, and they're up here. They're in New England. We can get them in New York, which is cool. In other major cities, which is great. But good stuff. He's a British expat. We talked about. I lived in England for a little bit, and we talked about that. And the hops are cool. They're doing some good stuff with hops, and they have some access to some really great hops there with the flavors that are coming out of these hops, the hybrids and the new ones. It's fantastic, unbelievable. And they're really making great beer. So I thank David for coming on. Hey, and if you like our show, you like our podcast, please go onto iTunes. Give us a rating, give us a review. That's the only way we get up in our rankings and we attract more attention. Don't charge you for any of this stuff. It's all free. You download it. But that's all I ask for. Just give me a rating or review. And tell a friend, actually. Tell 10 friends. That'd be awesome. Share it on Facebook. If you like what we're doing, you want to send me an email, michael@craftbeerstorm.com. If you don't like what I'm doing, send me an email too. If you have connections, I'd love to get people on the podcast. We're 360. Anybody in the craft beer world, I'll talk to them. We'll get them on. We've had a lot of guests from all over the place, worldwide. So wherever they are, connect me and them, and let's do it. All right, so that's our podcast for today. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and we'll talk to you on Wednesday. Take care.